Antoinette New, and I created this video especially for my expat friends who are moving to Atlanta from outside the U.S. If you're moving here from another U.S. city, then this diagram of the Atlanta highway system that I'm about to show you may look somewhat familiar, because from city to city the highway systems look pretty much the same because of the federal highway system. But before I get into that, I want to give you a short commentary on MARTA, which is our bus and rail system. I've lived in and visited several European cities where the bus and rail system covers a city like a spider web. And I'm here to tell you, Atlanta does not work that way. The short story is, if you want to get to more than one appointment in a single day, you need a car. It's getting better. I mean, there are lots of programs and projects in the works, but today you need a car. So, having said that, let's get started. The foundation of the Atlanta highway system is this blue circle. It's the perimeter, or I-285. And typically a perimeter, which encircles a city, will be a 3-digit odd number. A 2-digit odd number usually signifies a road or an expressway that runs north-south, and a 2-digit even number typically runs east-west. So if you keep that in mind and you get stuck somewhere, you can use those guidelines to help find your way back to what's familiar. Now, every city has an exception, and in Atlanta the exception is Georgia 400. That connects points inside the perimeter to points north like Alpharetta and beyond. And as you can see, it's a 3-digit even number. Now let me give you a few keywords that you will hear in different conversations about traffic from your colleagues, your friends, or maybe from the traffic reporters you'll listen to on the radio or TV. First keyword is the perimeter. We already talked about that. But we also use expressway interchangeably with perimeter. An expressway is just a road, a highway where we go fast. In Atlanta, you may hear expressway used in relationship to I-20 or I-75 or any of these roads. But when you hear perimeter, they're always talking about I-285. Just in the last couple of years, I've heard people start using the terms ITP and OTP. ITP means inside the perimeter. That's any point inside the perimeter. And OTP is outside the perimeter. That's any point outside the perimeter. So if someone says, I live off of I-85 inside the perimeter, they're talking about this, something in here. If you hear and you'll mostly hear traffic reporters talk about 75-85, being on 75-85. As you can see, I-75 comes into the city from the northwest side of the perimeter. I-85 comes into the city from the northeast side of the perimeter. And right here, they conjoin, and they don't split until somewhere a few miles or several miles south of downtown Atlanta. So anytime someone talks about 75-85, they're talking about this section right here where 75 and 85 are one and the same, and then below the city they split, and 85 goes towards the airport, which is over here. Now, another confusing concept can be the directional signs that you'll see along I-285. Case in point, if you live or you enter 285 from the west side of the perimeter and you know that you need to go to the northeast side of the perimeter, here when you get on and you're going in this direction, the sign may say I-285 north, because at this point on the perimeter you're traveling north. But if you were to enter here going to the northeast side of the perimeter, the sign would say 285 east, because in fact you are traveling eastward because of where you got on at the where you got onto 285. And the same is the case all the way around. So don't be confused. It just depends on where you enter. Which direction you're traveling in depends on where you enter. Let's see. Another term that you'll hear is spaghetti junction. And that's this area right here on the northeast side of the perimeter where I-85 and I-285 overlap. And at this point, I-285 is about 4 or 5 lanes each way. And then I-85 is about 4 or 5 lanes each way. So if you look at an aerial view, it really does look like a bowl or a plate of spaghetti. So that's called spaghetti junction. Now let's talk about rush hour. And I think rush hour is pretty much the same anywhere you go, any city, any country. Rush hour is rush hour. Here in Atlanta, I've seen traffic as early as 7 a.m. and I've seen traffic stay thick until as late as 9:30 or 10 a.m., especially if there's an accident or something. But the general rule of thumb is if you want to beat the rush, you need to be out the door and on the road by 7:30 to get ahead of the thickest part of the traffic. The afternoon rush hour starts as early as 3. I've seen traffic start to slow down as early as 3 o'clock, and I've seen it stay thick as late as 6:30 or 7 p.m. But the general rule of thumb is if you want to beat the rush, you need to be out the door and on the street by 4:30. If you can't do it by 4:30, then you may want to work a little late or, duck out of traffic and have a drink. But otherwise, you might just need to plug in your headset and be prepared to talk on the phone or something while you crawl through traffic. Another concept associated with rush hour, and you really need to be aware of this will help calm your nerves some, is being aware of whether you're traveling with rush hour traffic or against it. What do I mean by that? I live over here on the northeast side of the perimeter, and I try not to travel during rush hour, but if I'm asked to, to meet someone or go attend a meeting first thing in the morning, and it's on the north side or the northwest side of the perimeter where there are a lot of employers, a lot of office parks, a lot of high-rise office buildings and such. If I'm going this way in the morning, I'm going to be going with rush hour traffic, and my ride is going to be pretty hairy. If you are on the west side of the perimeter in the morning, then you're going to be traveling against rush hour traffic if you're going to the northeast side, because again, people are coming in from I-20 and headed north to the north and west side of the perimeter. And it really depends on where you are along the perimeter, like everything. But just be aware to find out ahead of time if you're going to be traveling with rush hour traffic or against it. And before I close, let me tell you this true story about speeding, because no conversation about traffic in Atlanta would be complete without a speeding story. When I was an intern at the Federal Department of Transportation years and years ago in D.C., where I'm from, Georgia was one of those states in jeopardy of losing its federal highway funding because it couldn't control the speeders. And once I moved to Atlanta, I figured out exactly what that looks like firsthand. It looks like people in the far left lane going 90 and 95 miles per hour. Yeah, the speed limit is posted at 65 in some places and 55 in others, but 95 and 85 and 95 miles per hour is not uncommon. So if you're in the far left lane and someone comes up behind you doing 80 or 85 miles per hour, don't fret, just scoot over a lane or two and give it a minute or two, because there's a concept, a habit of piggybacking for speeders. And piggybacking is just, well, I know that guy's going about 85, so if one of us gets pulled over, it's probably going to be him because he's in front. So when you pull over for a speeder, don't pull right back over. Give it a minute or two to see if there are any piggybackers right behind him or her. I think that's it. I think that's the most important stuff that you need to know about the highway system here. I'll cover MARTA and some other questions that you may have in another video, but for today, that's it. Enjoy and thanks.